much for joining us today for our stress management series. Today, we're going to be focused on building deeper awareness around difficult emotions. So this is our 6th session in the series, and we are going to be hanging out with our, facilitator, Jen Knowles, today. And if you guys will set it to speaker view, then you'll be able to see her.
Thanks, Erin, for the always lovely introduction and wonderful graphics that I don't even know how to do. Without Erin, you all would just go straight to my face. Hi, everybody on here. Thanks for being here today, and also people who will probably listen to the recording as well. I'm just going to kind of check in with the purpose of a little bit more information about this session, and then we're going to go into a sit like we always do for those of you who have been with me in any capacity, whether that's on any of these Zoom calls or in person. We always start with that. So the purpose of this going deeper, for those of you who've been in a lot of these sessions or most of these sessions, and I recognize a lot of faces on here, we have done 5 sessions, and so we are repeating those sessions again with a deeper understanding of them. So this awareness of difficult emotions, it's just the same name from the first session, but we're going deeper. And what that means for this time together is that there will be more in-depth practices than the first time around emotions. And we aren't going to talk just about difficult emotions. We're just going to kind of talk about emotions more generally speaking. It also means that, like our students, hey, we all need reminders, repetition of practice, and accountability to build new habits of mind. So there are going to be some repeated practices going on here for the simple sake of just that. Like our students, we all need reminders, check-ins, reteaching. And I'm going to say this too, we probably all felt frustration. I know I have, and maybe even a little insulted. I know I have, when students need to be reminded so much of something we've already taught, or if they forget altogether something that has been taught to them. And this is a really good opportunity to check in with that notion and build some awareness and compassion about how it feels to be reminded and supported with love and care when learning something new or building on something you already know. So we're going to do a sit. I will be guiding you with my voice. I don't really know how long it's going to take us, but we're going to just move through it naturally. And at this time, a couple of things. If you want to turn your screen off so that you have some privacy, that is perfectly fine. Another thing is, if you have your phone near you, this is all an invitation, but I'd like to invite you to maybe silence it, maybe put it on, what's that thing called when you put it on, don't remind me or notify me, I can't remember what it's called, but even turn it over, because when the moment that thing dings, it takes you right back into life. And this is just a chance to be present, be here for you and you alone. And so without further ado, if you can just find a comfortable and upright posture, find some stillness. Again, if you'd like to turn off your screens, if you have kids in the background or pets or sounds, do not worry. It is a part of your experience and it's okay. There is no wrong way to practice stillness and self-care. Just if you have sound around you and you feel tightness, maybe you can just soften your body and allow yourself to become present. And I will start us off by ringing the bell. Listen with all of your attention until the sound goes away, and I will continue speaking. So just start with listening, continuing to listen rather, to the sounds around you. What do you hear, near and far? Name them in your mind. And continue to focus on listening. Inviting acceptance of what's around you and bringing presence by noting what's around you. And then we'll shift our attention from listening to our bodies, noticing as we move from the head to the toes, sensations anywhere, and without trying to change them, just noticing and breathing into them to let go a little bit. Start by softening our foreheads and our eyes, relaxing our jaw and our mouth, softening shoulders, noticing along the way any other sensations like tightness, hot or cold, or just the weight of clothes on your body. And moving our attention to our backs. See if you can breathe into your lower back and whatever sensations you hold there. And without purposefully trying to change something, can you just let go? Just this thought of letting go. Softening your belly. Noticing your arms, the top of your arms, and your elbows and your forearms. Wherever they are resting, can you just feel the weight of them? Breathing into them and feeling them a little more weighted as you breathe out. Bringing attention to your hands and your fingers. What sensations do you feel there? I often feel pulsating and cold. Pulsating as blood flow. And then bringing attention to where we're sitting on our bottom, the chair holding you up and your body weighted down in it. Just feeling your whole upper torso weighted down in stillness and possibly relaxation. And if you can simultaneously loosen those muscles, just breathing in and letting go and softening your belly. You might even feel a little more weighted down after that. Feeling our legs, top of our legs, our knees, our calves, in whatever position we sit. And our feet. Maybe we feel nothing at all in these places, or tightness, or softness, and just breathing into that. Now shifting our attention to our breath, just focusing on the natural breath. Establish your awareness there, noticing cold air as you breathe in your nostrils or your mouth, and warm or neutral air as you breathe out. And if you notice your attention go somewhere else, like thinking or planning or listening, so it's all good. Just gently come back to your breath. Maybe just focusing all of your attention on 3 more natural breaths. What we're working towards here is allowing whatever is in our experience to happen. Another goal here is to try and focus our attention on one thing, building our attention skills, noticing when our attention shifts from one thing to another, from the breath to a thought, and then being able to come back with kindness to that point of focus, being our breath. That point of focus can also be a scan of your body, releasing tension. That point of focus can also be listening. So as I practice quiet for a few moments, choose your point of focus, the breath, the body, or listening, and see if you can stay there with your attention. And if your attention shifts, just gently come back. Even if you have to pull your attention back 10 times in a few seconds, it's okay. Continue to accept everything you experience. Go ahead and relax your attention now. And I'm just going to say a few words before we come back into this virtual room. So, shifting your attention to my voice. I'd like to offer just some words to you about change. So, life changes, and it often happens really quick. And we can wake up like we have to a world one day where we barely recognize it. And so, without warning, the path we're on, the life we choose, it takes us in directions that we aren't prepared for. And sometimes our instinct is to just resist that, to push it away, to fight it when we don't know. We want to protect ourselves from instability and from change. But the thing is, change is all around us. It's unavoidable and it's constant. So, what would it be like to loosen our grip, to let go of our agenda? Maybe just little by little, baby steps with kindness and open mindedness, get comfortable with uncertainty. So, I invite you to find moments, little moments, to let go when you notice any resistance. And see how it feels to experience life with a little more ease when we do this. And then start to bring your attention back to your natural breath. Breathing in your nose and out your nose with all of your attention. Focus on 3 natural breaths. And I will ring the bell to bring us back into the virtual room. So if you'd like to just come back into the room with your beautiful faces or not, that's totally up to you. I like to see faces. Take a second to stretch. Move your body, maybe even go across your body because that really kind of activates left and right brain. Twist your back, bend over. Oh, my back just cracked. Oh, goodness. Really needed to do that, I guess. Hey, never underestimate the power of stretching. It is magical. I have a great aunt who told me the secret to her long and happy life was morning stretches. I have a cousin on this call who might even know what I'm talking about. Good old Aunt Velma got to be lived a long life and drove a convertible and stretched every morning. Maybe that's the secret to a good life. All right, friends. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about part of the sit today about change. This time is scary. None of us really know how to do this. And I think it's important for me to constantly just validate what you're experiencing with this. We're all learning to be with and embrace this unknown. And really the only thing we know for sure is our past. You can plan, you can organize, you can anticipate, but that doesn't make something known. When we get comfortable with the illusion of stability and we get in a groove of a routine, and then all of it's taken away. I'm saying all this because on some level, we never really know what will happen in our life. And we just sometimes forget that that's true because we get used to our routines. And this is an intense version of that, right? This time with all the things that are going on. But I just want to validate that things are changing all the time. And it's okay. I've said this a lot this week, actually, to individual teachers. I do individual Zoom calls with some teachers. And it's okay to see this time not only as a difficult time, to acknowledge that, to accept that, to be with that, because of all the unknowns and all the things that have gone on, particularly for us here in Chattanooga, but also as an opportunity to practice acceptance of change, acceptance of what we don't know. And sometimes when we can just kind of allow the experience to be there, it can feel better. A quick piece of information to those of you that are new, like, I don't know if, I know some of you are on repeat, I almost said repeat offenders, like this is a bad thing, but you get me. If you know me, you get me. But for those people who have not been on a call with me before, I'm just going to say a few statements about the brain and emotions. So I just want to say that our brains are hardwired to remember bad over good. I'm not going to go into too much science behind this, but it's called negativity bias. Our brains do that to protect us, to keep us safe from threats, whether they're perceived or real. If we are very in tune with that and very good at worrying and being anxious and reacting to emotions without awareness, can get the best of us. The good news is we can rewire our brains with new habits around emotions and how to practice intelligence and wisdom around them. I will say that it takes dedication, lots of practice, and the will to be better for ourselves and others, but it's possible. So emotions are a physical, cognitive, behavioral experience. And even though they can feel complex and they can feel unique in how we respond to them and how they make us feel and where they come from, it's important to understand something that I always think is really interesting. All of them are unique. They all are different, but all emotions go through the same standard cycle. I'm going to say that again. All of the emotions that we have, the pleasant ones, the unpleasant ones, they all go through this cycle. And I'm going to show you the cycle in a second, and then I'm going to talk to you about why, just a little bit about why it's important to understand that emotions are all similar and how they come about. So let me, well, Erin, actually not me, is going to show you a slide, and I'm going to talk you through it. So there are several people out there who speak to this cycle of emotions, experts in emotions and in mindfulness. And I'm showing this to you because I want you to understand that an emotion is not just, here's my emotion and here's how I react to it. It's actually a little bit more complex than that. And so this is typically the cycle, and then I'm going to give you an example. So something triggers you, whether it's internal or external. And remember, Nick told us we could minimize the picture so that you can see this without people's faces. Something triggers you. You have an internal or external event that triggers you. So a memory or a thought would be an internal. Maybe somebody saying something to you, positive or not. Maybe a crying child. That would be something outside of our internal experience that would trigger us. Then the second step of this cycle is that you interpret it. So this is a complex thing. And mind you, these steps happen within seconds typically. You interpret it. So you filter it through your evaluation, your beliefs, your assumptions, your prior experiences with this particular emotion or a person to tell your story. So the story that I carry with me about why something happens. A physical response happens, heart beating fast, stomach tight, fist tight. Maybe if you're excited, you get a lot of energy in your extremities. Then the urge to act, not acting, but our urge to act. So like telling myself, this is what I want to do or say. Now here's the important thing about urge to act is that you may or may not act on that urge. Then the next step of the cycle is what you actually do about the emotion. So the action that you take, okay? Then the last part of this cycle are the after effects. So the after effects depend on whether you act on your urge or not. So let me give you an example. My husband, okay, this is a true story, and I feel bad for him because I'm always putting him into my stories, but I feel like he's all right with it. He was frustrated with me because I said I was going to do something and then I wanted to change the way I was doing it. And so he expressed to me his frustration about this thing that I agreed to do that I wanted now him to do. So he says to me, I don't want us to go back and forth on this. I'm feeling a little frustrated that we're now changing this agreement that we made. So my external trigger, I interpret it. I start going through, well, guess about all the other, in my head, let's talk about all the other things that I do in this family. Why can't you do it? You're free this morning, we've gone through this kind of stuff before. So I start to tell my story to me to validate my emotion of frustration also. Third, physical response. My heart's beating fast. And this almost happens simultaneously as I start to tell myself the story. Heart beating fast, fist tight, face tight, jaw tight. My urge to act. This is what I want to say to him. Well, do you know all the things that I do? Do you ever think about how hard I work as a mom? What are you, on it. And then and I want to say these things. So there is my urge to say those things. Okay. So here's where the cycle could go two different ways. What I actually do depends on whether I act on that urge or not. So let's say it goes in two paths. One path would be to say what I want to say to him. Okay. I react to my emotion and I use blame and shame to make my point. Okay, so what I actually do in that moment is I live on my urge. The after effects of that are more shame because I've now said something to make him feel bad. I have escalated the issue by blaming him and shaming him. And now I'm feeling bad, even more angry. And so I've stacked on my other emotions. So that is my after effects. Now, if I take the other path, and I say to him, okay, I'm really frustrated hearing you say this, but I understand what you're saying. And why don't we just stick to the original plan and I'll just deal with it. No big deal. If I do that, I'm not acting on my urge. And my after effects are, I really kind of wanted to say what I want to say, but I actually feel like I can bounce back faster. I can move forward. I might even be proud of myself for not acting on the urge that I really wanted to do out of reactivity, but I'm more responsive. I'm telling you about this cycle because it's important, at least to me, to bring attention to the fact that this cycle can be broken. And it can be broken with awareness. So you don't know what you don't know. And if you didn't ever think about an emotion taking these steps, then you didn't know where you could break the cycle. But breaking the cycle is the reason that I'm showing you this as a way to go deeper with emotions. It can be done with practice. It can be done with awareness. It can be done with practices of breathing and slowing down your story and your urges. And it could be something you just think about the next time you have an unpleasant emotion. Maybe even take some time to reflect on a previous experience you've had with this cycle in mind. And, this will be recorded. You can go back and look at it and take a picture of it. I don't know if you can find it online and in this forum, but feel free to look into that. But you are in charge of this cycle. And now you know that there's an urge, and then there's what you actually do about it. And are the after effects really worth what you need to say or do? So is it helpful or hurtful? Not everything that's helpful is easy, by the way. Helpful doesn't mean always easy. Helpful means growth and movement. We're going to do a practice today called naming emotions. This is an adaptation from, I mentioned her, I think every time I talk to people, Elena Aguilar. I love her, but it's also an adaptation from someone named Erin Olivo. She's a psychologist and a mindfulness expert. I really like her a lot. She's a great website with all kinds of really helpful information. And she established what we call 8 core emotions. If you ever were to go and explore emotions online, you would notice people have different opinions about how many core emotions, which I'll talk about what that is in a second, how many core emotions there are, and what that means. But naming emotions is not easy. And it's helpful to take some time to consider a feeling when it arises. And when we learn how to effectively and specifically name our emotions, sometimes we might notice that instead of feeling and naming anger all the time, I'm just angry. When we build our intelligence around emotions, it might be more like, I'm not really angry, I'm actually embarrassed or impatient. And being able to notice and play with these nuances can help us get more clear, typically, on where these emotions are coming from. So I'm going to show you this slide. It's going to be a little overwhelming. I'm going to explain it to you before we interact with it. Now, what I'm about to show you are core and basic emotions at the top. So this practice that we're doing is called naming emotions, like I said. And if you look along the top, these are 8 core emotions according to Erin Olivo. Some people say there are 6. She chooses 8. And I personally like her way of thinking. So core or basic emotions are a natural development of every human being. They're in all of us, and innately so. They are also can be a state of being, which we call a feeling. Core emotions are kind of like building blocks. Let's look at it that way. And you'll notice on this slide that there are nuances of each core emotion. So the more we build on our emotional vocabulary or emotional literacy, and that's what I mean by developing, just like we ask kids to develop their vocabulary and their language, this is you doing the same for yourself on emotions. The more we build on the emotional vocabulary, the better we become at articulating and expressing to ourselves and others what we are experiencing and why. So this is what we're going to do. I'm gonna invite you to get a piece of paper and pencil if you haven't already. I meant to say that in the beginning. Just if you ever come on another call, just know that I'm going to ask you to bring paper and pencil, because reflection is a really important part, and writing reflection makes things more observational and real. Secrets are no fun. Secret sees it hurt someone. Sometimes when we put it out there, just got to see the naked truth. So what we're going to do is you're going to get a series of questions in the chat box to report out on, okay? I did this practice myself. I've said this before, I never do invite anything that I haven't done myself, and I found it really helpful. So the first 2 questions we're gonna put in the chat box for you, and Erin's actually going to put it in the chat box for you because she's, again, so much better at this than I am. And what it's gonna ask you to do is, while she's putting them in there, Oh, there you go. This is the first step. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you read in the chat box this first questions and you can respond to them on paper. And then if you want to put your responses in the chat box as we go, you can do that too, because there's going to be about 3 more sets of questions. Okay? And I want you to focus on core emotions right now, just core emotions. It shouldn't take too long. That's the emotions in the green boxes. It helps if you write them down. And then we'll invite the next set of questions for you to reflect upon, or Erin will. So your next step here in building your emotional literacy and awareness and intelligence is to look under and really think about getting more specific about the nuance of that core emotion. So for example, and you might even find that you go to, you picked a core emotion, but actually you see a nuance of a different one. You know, don't read too much into that. We're just kind of getting more specific. So if you need to flip it over to another one, go for it. I was thinking I was feeling angry earlier and I ended up looking at put off and I felt more put off than angry. And so I changed to my core emotion would have been disgust. That's intense, but. There's no limit to how many you identify, by the way. I identified 6 that I was feeling. If you're feeling a lot, maybe that is information to you. And you can continue on this question, but we're going to post the next phase of this practice. We'll spend a few minutes here. Throughout this process, I welcome anybody to ask any questions in the chat box or comments, and then we will invite conversation here in a minute. Oh, the chat doesn't show up on this. Oh, on the recorded video? Okay. Can we talk about that at the end? I'll state them. Nice. And I'm going to tell you, the more that you kind of identify emotions as you're sitting here kind of recalling the last couple of days or the week that you've been through, you know, just continuing to write down things that come up. The more you give space and time for reflection and remembering, the more you get out of it. I realized that I was put off and I really needed to write some things down. So that really helped me kind of heal on that a little bit. Just saying. Nobody's looking at your writing. I'm going to give you about another 30 seconds to explore. So I want to tell you just from a personal experience, by the way, April, I think it's awesome that happiness is something that you've experienced, or optimism. If we're speaking on nuances, I love optimism. I want to tell you, I'm just going to be transparent with you about my words and just how they connected. So I chose put off and peaceful, resentful, content, pressure, and joyful. And when I did my work around them, I noticed that those are a lot of extremes that going on there. And I noticed that the unpleasant emotions were arising when I felt overwhelmed by too many things at once. And also, I chose to come into a different, I chose to go to a house, a different house in the mountains that my parents owned to stay here. And I noticed that trying to move my kids and me here was a lot of pressure and work. To try and do that. And so it was just a really good check-in for me to remember why I might be losing my patience more, having a harder time with homeschooling and all of that and balancing all of it. So, it was really informative to me, and I encourage and hope that you can notice these next questions that are going to come up and think about that. So Erin, will you put the next questions up? So it's, did anything surprise you, or did any of this feel challenging to reflect upon? And I'm going to mute you while I hang
on. Jen's one of those great people that still has a home phone.
I do too, Erin.
I know you do. So does my mama.
Oh my goodness. I gotta turn this off. Somebody really wants to get in touch with me. Real life, people, real life.
How do you find your cell phone if you don't have a home phone? Just saying.
I'll share that with you later.
If somebody else call it.
There you go. Does anybody want to share anything out about this practice?
I'll go first. So I noticed that some jealousy feelings were bubbling up with me this week, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. So I think being able to look at these other emotions that are underneath those core emotions really helped me see that I was feeling resentful towards my husband because he is still going to work every day. And so I'm here with our 7-month-old and trying to work and trying to take care of the home and trying to take care of the baby and all these things that I'm doing that he has no idea about. And it seems so easy whenever he comes home, because he hasn't been a part of any of that. And then of course I felt guilty because he is going out every day and, risking his health and all to take care of us and provide this amazing product for people that kills the virus. It's just, so there was like this guilt feeling that started to come in as well. But it was really helpful, I think, to see those emotions that lie underneath those core emotions to really get to the underpinnings of what I was feeling.
I'm waiting. Just kidding. I'm not trying to put pressure on anybody. I'm going to tell you too, this is not an exhaustive list. I actually lessened this list because it's a lot longer. If you were to go to explore this practice, it's a lot longer. And so I definitely limited the amount of nuances under each one.
I noticed that one of them too that I can connect with is I tend to feel a little irritated because my husband, who is older than me, so I worry more about his health with all that's going on with the virus. But I'm like, I'm staying home. I'm not going anywhere. I'm afraid to go out. But my husband is more relaxed. So instead of me going to the grocery store, he goes to the grocery store because I worry about that. And when he comes home, I'm like, did you wear your mask? Did you have gloves? You know, did you follow the rules? And he's like, yes. And I'm still spraying everything down. And sometimes I get a little irritated because I'm like, why are you not as stressed as I am when you're older than me? You know, but he's just like, we got to let it go. You know, we do what we can do to stay safe and we got to let it go. I'm just not that easy about it. So that's
so April, what emotion did you identify with? What specific emotion?
Well, when I'm looking at the chart, it says it's the anger that you're being frustrated with. So, and I thought, oh, I would have never thought of that as an anger, you know, just that I'm frustrated right now, you know. So that was a little eye-opening.
Yep. I want to add too that Nick wrote in the chat that writing it down is really helpful, and I like it. So here's what I want to say. Sometimes just thinking about things without a system, without a protocol, I'm really big on that, on protocols or systematic approaches to emotional well-being and self-care. I feel like sometimes when we just freely approach something, we tend to be more reactive and less observational. And when we do something systematically, we're able to be an observer of our experience rather than caught up in it. And it just kind of takes the personal part away and looks at it from a systematic approach. So I think that it's a really good point to make that, you know, systematic. Do not underestimate the power of a systematic approach to your emotional well-being. Does anybody else want to say something before I move on? Oh man, Hannah, are you okay if I share yours?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So Hannah wrote in the chat box that she felt shame because as a related arts teacher, she feels like they get told a lot that they're not as important as core teachers, or they get told a lot that they're not as important as core teachers, and during this time especially. And that makes her feel sad, especially from family. So there's a lot of feelings from Hannah with the shame. And I think I would definitely encourage more exploration around the nuances of that, because and acknowledging that. Thank you for being brave and writing this down, by the way, because that, you know, shame can be a very prideful interaction with yourself. Like, you don't want to necessarily admit to that feeling or emotion. It's a very personal feeling or emotion. It affects pride and ego. And so I thank you for writing that down, and I'm glad you shared that. And to some degree, I can understand. I was a literacy coach for years. I understand that that piece. Thank you for your bravery, Hannah. So I'm going to move on. We're going to talk for a moment about breath work. So, I mean, the number one way for I feel like to kind of intervene on a cycle of an emotion is to not do anything, right? To just be quiet and take a breath. And please keep adding in the chat box what you want to get out, because we'll revisit it. We're gonna just talk about the difference between like natural breathing and a deep breath. So there's a couple of ways that you can use deep breathing to like literally slow down your internal physical and your physical response to something, and to give your chances of like what your urge to act versus what you actually do. So lots of benefits in breaking the cycle of slowing down your physical response to emotion, and then maybe if your urge to act is reactive and unpleasant, that you might make a different choice when you take a moment to slow down. So one of the breaths that I'm going to invite, I typically take a deep breath where I just breathe in really feel like I'm inflating my body and then like breathing out of my mouth. So in my nose and out my mouth, or I'll breathe in my nose and out my nose. So I'm going to invite you right now to we're going to practice a couple of breaths, deep breaths, and I'm going to let you kind of decide which one feels like something you might be willing to try to kind of break your cycle of an emotion, or just when you need it in general. So the first one is, it's called the 4-6-8 breath. And what it is it's the idea that you breathe in for a count, you hold for 6, and you breathe out for 8. You can do it either out of your nose or your mouth. It depends on how good you are at holding your breath. I typically breathe out of my mouth. And so I'm going to guide you in it, a couple of breaths using the 4-6-8 practice, and then we're just going to practice taking deep breaths without counts. So let's try it. So if you can just kind of get yourself in a posture to be ready for awareness and focus on your breath. And I'm going to count for you on the 4-6-8 breath. So, our even numbers, 4-6-8. Breathing in your nose for 4, holding it for 6, and out of your nose or mouth for 8. The out breath of a deep breath is the most important part to really slow your physical response to a difficult emotion. That's why the out breath is longer. All right, so let's try this. All right, so breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let it out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you don't go all the way to 8, don't worry about it. Just let it out until it's gone. And just notice how you feel right now. And then we're going to do one more of the 4-6-8 breath. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let it out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And notice how you feel. Maybe you feel tingly, heavier. One of the most important things to pay attention to here is how you feel after a breath, an intentional breath. So let's explore a couple of other deep breath practices. One is breathing in and out of your nose, and the other one is breathing in your nose and out your mouth. It's pretty simple, but different people have different preferences. And so, without experience of different ones, we don't ever know really what feels natural to us or helpful. So let's try, I'm going to guide you. So it's the idea of breathing in your nose and filling yourself up like a balloon and then letting it out of your nose. I mean, don't hold your breath to the point where you feel like you're going to pass out. It's not like that intense. I really like to keep it safe, but anyway. All right, so let's do this. So go ahead and get yourself in a posture that's, bringing awareness to what we're about to do. And breathe in your nose all the way in until you feel like you're about to expand no more, and then breathe out of your nose. When you breathe out of your nose, it's going to make a sound, right? It's intense out breath. So you're going to hear it. And that's okay. And I'd like to invite you to do it one more time. So breathe in your nose all the way in until you're fully expanded like a balloon, and then let it out of your nose. And notice how you feel. I tend to feel these breaths a lot in my chest and my shoulders. So maybe pay attention to where you feel it the most in your body. And then the last breath we're going to do is breathing in your nose and out your mouth. And so go ahead and breathe in your nose all the way in until you cannot hold it anymore, and then let it out of your mouth with some noise. It's like a sigh almost. It sounds like this. Like that. So we're going to try it one more time. So breathing in your nose, breathe in all the way in and expand, and let it out. And notice how you feel. So I just want you to know now you have an experience of different kinds of breathing. There's also natural breath. I really, when I do a sit in stillness, it really helps me to notice breathing and cold air going in my nose and more neutral air coming out. And really just kind of bringing presence to that sensation can get you out of your head and into your body. So, if just natural breathing and putting attention to that sensation of cold air, neutral air helps you, that's another way to interact with the breath and break the cycle of an emotion, or just when you need it. As we kind of work towards the end of this session, the very first session that we did, I suggested 3 strategies. I wanted to just, like I said in the beginning of the session, give out a reminder of these 3 tools as additional ways or other ways to practice interacting with emotions, regulating them, taking care of them, noticing them, and accepting them. And they were what I like to call in the moment practices. So we have our practices outside of emotions, like naming the emotions practice we did to learn to get to know them, be familiar, build awareness, build intelligence. But then when we actually have these emotions, it's a lot easier said than done, right? So continuing to remind yourself that there are things you can do, even if you feel like you should be right in that moment, that doesn't mean that you have to be right in that moment. We have to learn to let go. Big and small. So, Erin, is there a slide for the 3? No, that's fine. Stop it. So I'm going to remind you in person. And Erin, will you type it in the chat box? Can you do that for me? Okay, no worries. The first one is what I call in the moment practices, helpful when creating our new habits of mind. We want to make sure that we are continuing to use tools that help us and slow us down. One of those is sensational breathing. We're not going to practice it right now, but what it is if you've not been on a call or if you've not heard me talk about it, I've talked about it a couple of times in a couple of sessions. It's this idea of breathing into those emotion or those physical feelings that you have around an emotion. So anything particularly with anger or shame or disgust as those main emotions, or fear, heart beating fast typically happens, stomach is tight, jaw tight, fist tight, body tight. Okay. So whatever those sensations are, whatever sensation you feel the most, the idea is that you are noticing that sensation and you take a second to breathe into that place in your body to just let go of it a little. So like, for example, anger in my belly, I breathe in to my stomach. My attention in my mind is that the breath is, going into my belly. I'm breathing in relaxation and breathing out the anger just to slow it down as far as my physical response goes to the emotion. So I'm breathing into my belly, breathing in relax, breathing out anger. And just really, when we do that, it kind of slows down our physical response, acknowledges the emotion, and just gives us a pause. There's lots of benefits to sensational breathing. Another one that I have brought up before, just as a check-in reminder, is name it to tame it. And this actually can be really beneficial alongside building your emotional literacy. I would really implore you to really get to know emotions that you have more specifically, and then being able to notice an emotion and just say, hey, this is anger happening right now. This is, I'm feeling put off right now. I'm feeling really peaceful right now. This is the feeling of peaceful. And just being careful about how you say that. So I'm not saying I am angry or I am put off. That makes it seem like the put off owns me. I'm feeling this way because feelings are temporary. I'm having this feeling, and naming it to tame it helps break the cycle of acting on urges with unpleasant emotions. And the last reminding emotion practice that I had mentioned in the first session on difficult emotional awareness is the mood check-in. I have it every day on my phone. I have an app that asks me how I'm feeling. It's called a mood check-in, and it's so helpful for me to see how I'm starting my day. And you can do this with your phones. You can have a daily check-in reminder. Siri can do lots of things for you. So can whatever those Amazon Dots and whatever the 4 other types are. you can just say, my mood right now is, and then whatever your mood is. And you can particularly do this during difficult times of your day. So morning times around a certain time are difficult for me, and like 4 o'clock. I do mood check-ins. Really helps me kind of be intentional about how I communicate with others in my family. All right, so I'm going to be quiet now, and I'm going to invite you to do something. I'd like you to write down anything that is stuck with you that you'd like to take with you as a practice or a thought to carry you. Maybe it's going back to the naming emotions another day. Maybe it's one of the 3 things I recommended. Maybe it's just a deep breathing exercise, whatever, or just something I said. Whatever it is, I want you to write it down, please. You don't have to write it in the chat box. You can if you want, or you can write it on paper. It's up to you. I love to see them in the chat box. Now, I'm going to give you like 15 more seconds to write down what you're going to take with you. I'm literally looking at the time. 15 seconds goes by really slow when you're looking at a stopwatch. Holy cow, that was long. All right, now, this is the one time I'm going to ask you, I love all the little tools in here, to pick up your phone. And anybody who's done these knows that this is what I've done before. All right, so pick up your phone, and here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to, you can either say to Siri, you're gonna say to Siri in a second. I'm gonna be quiet so that they don't hear my voice. You're gonna say to Siri, Siri, remind me wait, what's today? Wednesday? Siri, remind me on Friday, or Siri, remind me on Saturday, or Siri, remind me on Sunday. Whichever day you choose, I'll let you choose. And then she's going to say, oh, what would you like me to remind you, or what time? Well, you can choose a time, but what I'd like you to tell her to remind you is whatever you wrote down. So please do that now. I will be quiet for 30 seconds. All right. I hope everybody did it, because I'm going to say this again. We all need reminders all the time to build new habits. We are all older people, and old habits die hard, and we got to really retrain that brain. And don't underestimate the power of reminders. All right, friends, I want to thank you for coming to this session on virtually. I like seeing a lot of familiar faces on here. We're going to open up the session to Q&A for a few minutes. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything, this is a time where you can get off the call if you'd like, or you can hang around for a few minutes and listen to the questions, comments, statements, clarifications. So this would be a time. Yeah, go ahead.
Jen, before I stop the recording and anyone else jumps off, I just wanted to let everyone know that as soon as this is over, I send the recording to one of our folks in communications. They cut it down and add a really fancy beginning and ending, and then they add it to the Hamilton County YouTube channel. Which is just for teachers to access, but then they send me that link and I add it to our Whole Teacher, Well Teacher Canvas course. So once that's done, then a reminder goes out to you guys. But what I can do also is taking these slides that we had, I'll just add them to a PDF and put those in the Whole Teacher Well Teacher course, and then I'll email them to everybody that was on this call so that you guys have those to reference.
So anybody can unmute themselves and ask questions. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous, and you're very welcome. I'm more honored than you are to be able to support everyone in this. But does anybody have questions, comments, things about the practices, or just a general thought that you can share? And if not, no big deal.
While we're waiting on everyone to, I guess, kind of gather their thoughts, I want to say thank you also for those of you who come back often, for those of you who tried this out for the first time, who gave yourself the gift of this time to explore this work that may bring up some weird feelings, but also probably provides a lot of clarity for what we're feeling right now. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to do this. Like I said, those of you who have been coming back every week, but those who are trying it out when you need it, or trying it out for the first time, or going and watching the videos afterwards, that's pretty fantastic. So thank you.
These sessions have been extremely helpful to me. I've been so stressed out lately, and every time we have one, it gives me a chance to sit back and breathe. And remember, I've got a little thing written in one of my notebooks that tells me that this is hard, but I'm good at what I do. Thanks to you and writing that down, I see it every day.
Well, that is just, I'm going to honor you for taking it seriously and understanding the power of like physical reminders. I mean, anchor charts aren't for naught, right? I mean, we need anchor charts too. So thanks for honoring yourself. I like to have long wait times. It doesn't make me uncomfortable.
I think it's just good because we're all together, and you know you're not alone, although you are alone at home and you're trying to communicate with your students and everything else that's going on. And it's just, like Tammy said, a time to just breathe. Just for me, I can breathe and just relax. And I've really appreciated it.
Good. I'm so glad that you give yourself this time, because it's, I mean, I think it's more of an honor for me to be able to give you this time than for you, at least in my opinion, for you to be here. So thank you for saying that.
This is Hannah. I'm just excited to take this practice, and when we do go back to school, whenever that will be, help teach my kiddos this. And of course, I'll share it with my colleagues, this session on Canvas, so they can see it too. But it applies to every subject, but in the arts too, naming these emotions and kind of breaking it down and taking those moments to breathe. That's something I haven't done before, but I've really thought about, is mindfulness in the arts classroom. And being a pretty new teacher, it's like a flood of resources, and there's so many good things out there. So it's just trying to figure out kind of what I really like, and I really like this. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I can tell you, Hannah, that honestly, and I tell a lot of teachers this, I think if I could give any, embodiment of emotional awareness, like being able to have the full experience of what it's like to build emotional awareness and intelligence for yourself. When you are practicing this yourself and you want to give that gift to others, to students, it will show up so much more authentically, strongly, and more like coming from a place of passion rather than obligation, right? Rather than, I really want you to behave, so this is what I'm going to offer you. But it's coming from a place of, I really value this. This is really important to me. It has helped me, and giving it to you. It will benefit so many more, including yourself, when it's authentic and true to who you are. So I do want to invite to, I've said this before on a call, but I've invited teachers to do like a mood check-in or an emotional check-in with their students. Aaron and I have talked about this. Like, I don't know why I keep saying don't underestimate the power of tonight. I should like make that a sign. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to say it again. Don't underestimate the power of doing a mood check-in or an emotional check-in with your students and giving them a list. Because I can't, like, even for all of you, I'm sure when you looked at that list, you were like, I mean, even when I looked at put off, I was like, I really wouldn't, had I not done this, I would not have been able to articulate that I feel put off. And it just makes me feel so much more clear on where my emotional reactivity is coming from, where my stress and where I can't articulate the feeling. And when I did that, it felt so much more wise to what I needed to do moving forward, and healing because I was able to write it down very articulately and clearly. And but I think giving a list of words and then just having the kids like pick one or make up one and then share out like, this is the feeling I'm having and why, is really helpful, because, you know, we can teach them all the academics in the world, but that nothing's going to translate at home right now like emotional well-being and conversations around that.